Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial related to Unreal Engine materials. In this one, what I will try to do is cover a material that I've been using for my project and thought it would be something useful to show. So with the usage of Megascans, I wanted to be careful with the amount of texture that is being used, and since we might want to use various number of meshes, we will need to use an increasing number of textures, and each one of those cans uses its own individual texture set. You're looking at um, base color, you're looking at normal, you're looking at roughness, and that is not to mention, if you're going to use displacement or anything like that. So another issue with this is scaling the mesh. Maybe you want to scale the mesh 2, 3, 5 times. I know this is something that I do. So let's see what that results in. So I'm going to drag in one of those quarry cliff meshes, and this is at 4K for the textures. So let me drag this one in. And I'm quickly going to jump into game mode. And as you can see, at this size, it looks quite okay. It still shows it a little bit pixelated, but it's nothing that is anything that couldn't work. But the size of it is kind of small. So what about if you were to go to make it, let's say, 5 times the size? Well, now you'll notice that the detail in the material is going to decrease quite a bit. Well, so as an example, let's take a look at how this material that we're going to work on today is going to look on this. So that one actually gives quite a bit more detail in the base color, and you still have the kind of the macro detail from the original mesh's normal. Well, so let's get into it. What I'm going to do first is let's revert this to our default material, and I'm just going to leave the mesh scaled 5 times. Okay. Let me bring in my materials here. So I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call this M. Let's call this underscore master and general with detail. Okay. Another thing that I want to do before we get started is, if you remember from some of the previous videos that I did, we were using a default material function that comes with Unreal, and which is flatten normal to get to be able to adjust the intensity of the normal. Well, that is a little bit odd, because if you have it set to 1, then that is kind of maximum flatness. So basically, there is no normal being seen in the detail of the in the texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another material function. So I'm going to create it right here. So let's go to materials and material function. And I'm going to call this normal strength. So this one's going to be really simple. We're not going to need too much to add to this. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to add a vector 3. And this one's going to be a full blue color. So what we're going to add to this is we're going to need to feed our normal as well as a strength for that normal. So for the normal, let's add an input. And we're going to call this one, since it's a vector 3 already, we're going to call this normal. Let me make sure I spelled this right. There it is. So normal. And we're going to need another vector 3, or another input, but this time this is going to be a scale. So this one is going to be the normal strength. All of these, we're just going to use alert node. So A is going to be our flat normal, then we have our normal in B, and then our strength in alpha. I'm going to feed this into output result, and there's that. Okay, so we're going to close this one for now. We're not going to need it. Let's start our work on our master material. So another thing that we're going to use for this is we're going to use switch parameters. Static switch parameters is what it's called. What this one is going to help us with is we're going to be able to turn on or off these features. So that way, if we're just going to use this material for, say, a table that we're not going to have a detail added to it, and we're just going to use, say, the baked maps for that, we're not going to be needing to turn on that detail section of the material. So that way, keeping the amount of instructions low. So, you know, a much simpler shader that way. Well, let's get started. First of all, what I'm going to do is let's add a few of the textures. So first of all, I'm going to use a texture sample, and I'm going to convert this to a parameter. So we're going to start by naming this one. This is going to be our base. Base color. And for now, we're just going to use, I have a few default textures to use for this. So let's take a look and see. I think I can use this gray color right now. I'm going to make a couple of duplicates for this. Use Control W. And for now, I'm not going to be worried about the metallic. Or actually, let's add that in, since this is going to be a more of a general type material, so we can add that in. Alright, so right now this one's going to be our base. Let's name this base metallic, base roughness, and base normal. One thing to make sure is that our base normal is going to need to be a normal type. So we're going to make sure and try and find, I know I have a default texture for this normal, like a white base normal kind of texture here. Okay, now let's actually get to making sure that we have something feeding into the UVs. And for that, I'm going to be starting with a custom rotator, because that one is actually quite powerful. It takes in, aside from like the regular UVs, you can also take in rotation values, so that way you can rotate your texture. Well, so for the UVs, what we're going to need is going to be a texture coordinate, and this one we're going to need to multiply it by an amount of tiling. So if you want to, especially when it comes to what I just showed you guys for this mesh, we're going to need something that we can tile that base color. So we're going to multiply this. And what we're going to multiply it in B is, let's add a couple of scalar parameters. So I'm just holding down S and left clicking, so we're going to have a base color U tiling. So let's call it U tiling. Let's duplicate this, and we're going to call this V tiling. And what we're going to do is just append these together. And then we're going to be able to feed that into B. And now we have our UV texture coordinates, and we'll be able to tile these multiple times if we so choose. Let's set a default value of 1. And now, just to our custom rotator, we'll just add our rotation center, which is going to be constant vector 2. and we'll set these to 0.5 and 0.5. And now for our rotation, we're just going to feed in another scalar. So this is going to be our rotation. And the default value, we'll set this to 0. We'll take a look at how this works once we have everything in place. But it works in, from what I've experimented with, the rotation is 0.25 seems to be 45 degrees, I believe, and 0.5 is 90 degrees. Hopefully I'm not mistaken. And then once you get to 1 is 180. This is also sometimes, as you can see, is like 0 through 1. So actually 1 is 360, so 0.5 would be 180 and 0.25 I believe would be 90 in that case. So let's feed this into our UVs. So we have base color, metallic, roughness, and normal. Okay, so at this point we can feed this into their respective connection, and we'll just have a very plain looking material that is just as basic as it can be. But we want to add a detail to this. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using these nodes here, and I'm just going to Control W and duplicate them, and duplicate my base normal. Feed this into our UVs. So the base of this node for our base normal is actually going to be our detail normal. There we go. Okay. So in order for us to get the detail in there, we're just going to have to somehow overlap these two. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, let's make sure that we have some kind of way to control the strength of our normals. And in order to do that, we'll just use the material functions we just created, and that was normal strength. Let's see, sometimes it doesn't really pop up in here, so you might have to go into your materials here and just drag it in. Okay. So let's feed in our normal, and we'll add another scalar. Also make sure that you rename these. So this one's going to be our detail utiling and our detail vitiling. When it comes to one of these scan meshes, you probably want to keep this excuse me, you probably want to keep this set to 1, because since it's scanned, it's only going to be constrained to that texture space. And then this one as well is going to be our detail rotation. Okay, so we're going to use the same node with our detail normal. Let's feed the normal in here. And now we're going to need a couple of scalars. So let's do a scalar. This one's going to be detail. We'll call this detail strength, detail normal strength. And let's duplicate it. And we'll call this base normal strength. And we'll just set the default value of both of these to 1. And make sure we connect this one here as well. Okay, now that we have this in place, a way to control the strength of our normals, let's actually combine the two. But in order to do that, let's be able to actually switch this on and off. So I'm going to look for a switch parameter, and we'll call this as detail normal. Oh, so if it's true, we want to show the combination of these two. But if it's false, I just want to show the base normal. So let's add that in, and at this point we can feed this into normal. So what if it's true? Well, in order for us to combine the two, what I'm going to use is a blend, angle, angle, corrected normals. And our what's our base normal going to be? So our base normal this time is going to be our detail, because that's our kind of our macro detail on that cliff. And then the normal is going to be our kind of repeating texture surface, and that's just going to be our additional normal. Let's go ahead and save this. And at this point, we can actually, once I connect the other ones, let's do that. And while we're at it, let's do a little bit of, give this a little bit more control. So I want to be able to control the amount of roughness and make this a little bit more versatile as well. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I will make sure that the base roughness, I'm going to use the RGBA, because sometimes depending on the developer, you could potentially purchase something off of the marketplace, and they will have one of these pack textures, and you want to be able to specify the channel that the roughness is. It could be like, I've noticed some of them that have metallic, or have roughness, metallic, and ambient occlusion, or some mix of these. So let's drag off of the RGBA and look for channel mixer, or channel, actually I think it's channel mask parameter. There we go. And we're gonna call this roughness channel. And by default, they usually come in on the red channel, so we're gonna leave red as connected. And once we have that, let's go ahead and do a multiply, and we're gonna multiply with a roughness multi scalar node. So let's call this roughness multi. Let's see if I'm spelling this right. There we go. And we'll set this by default to 1. And we'll feed this into roughness. When it comes to metallic, I want to change this base color to be black, because there's a lot of surfaces that are not metallic, and metallic is usually taken by the white in that color. So let's see if I have a default base. There we go. I have a base black color, and this one you can easily find it. I believe it's even in the engine resources. There you go. We can use that one right there. So for the base metallic, I'm also going to use something similar to this. And metallic, make sure I'm just trying to arrange these a little bit better. Well, let's call this metallic multiplier. Okay, well, so we have pretty much everything that we need at this point to see the kind of just use our repeating texture for our base, and then the normal for our detail. Well, so let's take a look and create an instance. So I'm just going to right click on this and create material instance. So I'm going to call this MI. Let's call this cliff. And sometimes I usually leave the other detail of the material attached to it. That is just personal preference. You can rename it to whatever you choose. Okay, well, at this point, we have a base color, a base normal, and a base roughness. That's pretty much what we're going to need. What I've done prior to this is I've actually downloaded some an Icelandic mossy rock, which I thought was kind of fitting for repeating base color. So I'm going to drag this in. So I have base color. Let's use roughness here, and then normal. So as you can see, we have a repeating texture, nothing too exciting about it. Let's apply it to our mesh. We go back, and where was that? In our tutorials, general materials. So we're going to apply it to this. And as you can see right now, that looks kind of ugly. There's no detail in it. It's pretty pretty pixelated, or like it's just very, not fun to look at. Oh, so let me drag this to the side a little bit here. Well, first of all, let's add a detail normal. So once you check this, you'll notice that at the bottom, now that we have the option to add a detail normal to this. What I'm going to do is go to my query clip here and use the scan normal for that clip. So I'm just going to drag that into detail normal. Let's take a look at how this looks now. Also, one thing that I'm going to do, since this one, remember, we scaled this up to 5 times, let's change our detail utiling. Let's make it 5 as well. Okay. And actually, this is the detail. This one has to stay at 1. My apologies. Let's change this back to 1. We're going to want the base color. So 5 and 5. Oh, so look at that. Now the detail of the map really comes through. As you remember, we have that right here. Let's see, detail normal strength. And you can bump this up to get more of that normal detail. Say if you set it to 0, you can see that detail just vanishes. So you don't get any of that macro detail on this mesh. So let's set it to 1. I believe 1 is a very good balance for that. What I sometimes do for my meshes, for these meshes, before using them in my project, is I lowered the base normal strength. It's pretty strong right now, so I usually do it at a point somewhere between a 0.2 and a 0.5. So you still get some of that micro detail on it. If I was to turn it off, let's take a look at it, how it looks. See, it just flattens it out. But a 0.2, 0.3 maybe, I think 0.5, it's still quite okay. So I'm going to keep it maybe at a 0.3. You still get some of that repeating rock kind of texture in there. But at this point, the only thing that I'm using that's unique to this mesh is the detail normal. Everything else, and the detail normal, you can always bring it back down from like a 4K to a 2K or even a 1K. I usually use it at a 2K because I'm going to be using this Icelandic rock across other meshes as well. One thing that I've noticed is that since a lot of the Megascans are taken from different locations on the globe, they might not fit so well together if you're not using something from the same biome or the same location. So for example, there are some cliffs that are looking really nice, but they have a completely different texture than these ones. Well, with this one, I'm able to use some of these textures along with some of these meshes, along with some of the other meshes that, if I was to use the scan texture, will look out of place. And now I think they would match a lot better since they have the base color that they share, and that would reduce on your memory usage quite a bit. Okay. Well, so this is we're not quite there. Another thing that I wanted to add to this is a way to add some kind of moss, via a mask or some other way of applying that cover, what I call it cover, to this. So let's take a look at how we can do that. Well, first of all, I want to be able to apply the cover in a specific way, either to tile it or rotate it. So we're going to use the same setup that we've had before. Just going to duplicate these, and I'm going to call these parameters. This is going to be cover utiling and cover v-tiling. And let's not forget about the cover rotation here. Alright, so now that we have these set up, let's I'm going to use one of these, maybe a base color here. And I'm going to call this cover. Okay. Now, similar to how the roughness or how some of the pack textures work, I've seen some of the cover textures that come with different packages on the marketplace are also in a packed format. So I'm going to be using the same system that we have here, one of those channel masks, I believe is what that node was called. Yeah, so it's a channel mask parameter. And this one's going to be cover channel. So cover channel, there. And we're going to feed in our RGBA texture there. Well, so now that we have this, let's actually work a way, because some of these, if we're going to use some of these masks, they're going to be kind of a black and white texture. So we want to try and find a way to control the strength of that. So a couple of ways that I'm doing with that is I use a power and a multiply. So we're going to bring in a power node and then a multiply. First of all, I'm going to be adding another scalar, and this one's going to be cover mask power, and feed it into the exponent here. And this one's going to be the multiply. And feed that into here. Okay, so now we have pretty much everything that we need to control our cover texture. Our cover, this one's going to be cover mask. I think this should be a little bit better explained, because this is a mask. So cover mask as well. So cover mask channel. Excellent. Okay, so this is the way to control where that mask is going to be applied, therefore where our, say for example, moss is showing up. Well, now, how are we going to do that? Well, we're actually going to be lerping between our cover color, the cover roughness, and the cover normal. So we're going to be lerping between that and the base values. So what we're going to need is basically the same nodes that we have here. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this one. We're going to let's start with the normal, because this is a little bit more complex. We're just going to have to kind of blend between them. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit here. It's creating a little bit more space. I was not able to find a better way to arrange these nodes, so bear with me. Well, first of all, let's duplicate this and call this cover normal. There we go, cover normal. We're going to feed in our, well, actually, sorry, this one's going to need, cover normal is going to, the cover normal, the cover roughness, and the cover color. You can also add cover metallic, but I didn't find any need for it at the moment. So in order for you to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate these. This is going to work in a pretty similar way. So we're going to have a cover U tiling, a cover V tiling, and a cover rotation. So now these values will be able to feed into our cover normal, as well as the cover roughness, metallic, if so choose to do it in the future, and base color. Okay, now that we have the cover normal, we can also give it the same that we did before, a way to control the strength of it. Let's call this cover normal strength. All right. Now I mentioned the way for us to blend between, because we're going to have three of these. We're going to have a base normal for our repeating texture. We're going to have a detail normal. And now we're also going to have a cover, in the form of, say, for example, moss. Well, so pretty much this is going to be, it's going to look similar to what we've done before. Though a little bit of a difference is that we're going to need to use a lerp node. So now the lerp node is going to take an alpha that comes from our cover mask. So let's bring that in. I'm going to try and arrange these a little bit better. Hopefully it's not going to turn into too much spaghetti. Okay, now what this one's going to be able to work with is, to what we're going to lerp with is, I'm going to be using a vector 3 constant, and this one is going to be a flat normal, so just 0, 0, and 1. So that's going to go into our A, and we're going to lerp it to our cover normal string. So what this one's going to be fed into, this one's going to be fed into our, I'm going to be feeding this into base normal string. And this one's going to be working just the same way with the blend angled normals. In this case, our normal is going to be our base normal, and our cover is going to be the additional normal. Now, in order for us to use this, we're going to use another switch parameter. So let's do a static switch parameter, and we're going to call this has cover. And this switch parameter is also going to be used by the cover roughness and the cover color. So if it does have cover, has cover, this one's going to be fed into true, and if not, we're just going to use the base normal. And in the end, this one's going to be added to our detail. Okay. So this is that for the normal, the base normal with the detail and the cover normal, if we so choose to use a cover normal. Now we need to do the same thing for our base color and base roughness. Like I said, I'm going to leave base metallic because I don't really use it. So especially when it comes to a metallic object, I'm not entirely sure if you could have use for it. But you never know. So let's add that in. We'll have that option. Okay. Well, so in that case, I'm going to duplicate the base color. I'm just going to switch it right here above this. And we're going to name this cover. Color. And of course, we're going to use the same UVs that we fed into our cover normal. So we're just going to bring this and place it right there. So we have the cover color. And the same way, we're going to lerp. So we're going to be using a lerp from our base color to our cover color. And we're going to be using our cover mask into the alpha. And the result of this, we're going to be feeding into our switch parameter. And the false is just going to be our basic base color. There we go. So now that it has cover, we'll be able to lerp between our base and our cover. Let me just see if I probably going to need to make a little bit more space here. All right, now we have the metallic. We're going to do the exact same thing. So this is going to be our cover metallic. Sometimes I kind of hate how this selection and that parameter name works. Cover metallic. And basically what we'll do is just duplicate these nodes. And let's try and create kind of a reroute node here for our mask, so we can use it in the alpha here. There we go. So we have a cover metallic and our base metallic. And actually I'm just going to use it from the multiply here. We'll do the same, a reroute node for the UVs. So now the cover metallic is going to go into our B. And it works the same way. We use the same static switch. We have a true and a false. And then this goes into metallic. Seems I'm going to have to move these up a little more. And last but not least, we have our roughness. And similar to how we had the base color in metallic, kind of duplicate this. And we're going to have cover roughness. And I believe we can, let's rename this real quick so we know it's the base metallic multi. And then this one's going to be our cover metallic multi. There we go. So we have a little bit more control over the amount of metallic. And we'll do the same for the roughness. So let's duplicate these here. This one's going to be the base metallic roughness multi with the base roughness channel. And this one's going to be our cover roughness multi. Oh, I missed a space in here. And a cover roughness channel. Speaking of values, we have our UVs. And now let's do our lerp and our parameter, our static switch parameter. So we have A to B, and then our mask. And this one's going into false, and this one's going into roughness. Okay, so there's a little bit of spaghetti. Hopefully you followed along and you didn't get lost along the way. Just gonna kind of hover over this and keep it paused for a little bit. So if you need to look back upon it, you can take a look at it. Okay, well, let's go ahead and save this. One thing that I want to make sure is that has cover is set to the default value of false. We don't want to start with that. Now that we have the material and just the general, the overall detail on it from the scan, let's try and add some moss to it. Well, let's take a look and open up our material here. So let's turn on has cover. So notice there's like a bunch of other options that have popped open for us. Well, first of all, let's take a look at cover. Now, earlier I've also downloaded something that looks like kind of a mossy surface. Let's see if it's in, I believe it's in surfaces, I hope. Okay, so actually that's mossy ground. Let's see, where was the mossy stone? Was it this? Yeah, there we go. So something like a mossy stone. Let's feed that into cover color and cover roughness. And let's see, where is the cover normal? Didn't we do that in here? How come that one's missed? I have the cover mask. We'll worry about that in just a little bit. Let's see, how come the cover normal did not get added in there? Let's do a quick search. We have the cover color. We have the roughness and the metallic, but no cover normal. And so what is that? Let's see what we have going on here. Oh, my apologies. So this one should have actually be added here, because we already have the normals turned on for the detail. And then this one should be fed into the true for this one here. Let's save this real quick. And there we have it, the cover normal. Now let's feed in our mossy texture. So we have a cover color. Let's add a cover normal. And there's a cover normal. And let's use the roughness as well. So we have the roughness. Everything else is still I'm going to be leaving as default because it's just the base stuff from Megascans. All right. Well, the one thing that we don't have is a cover mask, and right now it's just set to gray. I've downloaded also from Megascans this stain texture. It's probably not the most perfectest, most perfect to use for this one, but let's put that in. All right, so let's see if we can see some. Let's see if we can get some of that moss showing through. At the moment, I've actually set the cover mask and cover mask power to 0. Let's make them default to be 1. So let's set these to 1. And then go ahead and save. So there we have it. Now we have some of that mask working out as well. But now we can kind of tweak it up a little bit, and we can get some more of to multiply that. And the reason that I did that, I'm also using the power because we can get some of this effect as well. Let's see how that looks on our rock texture, on our clip. Well, as you can see right now, the tiling is pretty bad. So let's go ahead and fix that. Remember, now we have also the option to tile this. Now let's see if we, which one do we want to tile? Now this is the cover. And I believe, did I not rename that? Well, we have a cover U tiling. Let's see, did I just not see that? And this one should be available. Cover U tiling and cover V tiling. There you go. How come I missed that? No, that is not it. How come? What did I name these? Oh, I actually have them named the same way. So this one should be cover, let's call these cover, this one's going to be the cover mask. Mask. So this way we have control over the mask as well. There we have it. So let's save it. Let's take another peek at this. Now we'll make it, maybe make this 5 as well. Let's take a look at our rock. Yeah, there you go. Now that is also tiled quite a bit more. So if you look at it on the rock surface, you'll notice that we were able to tile that quite a bit. Let me bring this to the side here a little bit. And we'll play with some of the other values. Let's take a look at the cover first. So right at this moment, the cover mask is tiled at 1, right? So you can see it's kind of pretty nicely arranged. Well, we can try putting down to 0.5. So now there's even like kind of larger swaths of moss. And like I said, this is probably not the best stain texture that I could find, because it's basically kind of a watery stain, and I don't think it fits well for something like this. But you can find quite a bit of options with Megascans. So this is pretty much everything that I wanted to show. You can expand off of this material in ways of, for example, adding more control over the cover color and the base color by, for example, adding in a way to add some tint to the texture color. Like, for example, if you want to add, let's add that in here, because it could provide some pretty good results as well. So I'm going to be looking for a vector, so just holding down V and clicking, and this is going to be tint. And by default, I'm going to set this to be completely white, so it doesn't affect the color, the texture in any way. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to be multiplying with this, and I'm going to be feeding this into the nodes that it was previously in. So that's one. So I'm going to call this base color tint. Base color tint. And I'm going to use the same for the cover. Cover color tint. And plug this into B. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And let's see if we can play around with some of the values now that we have some options. I'm going to change the cover to something to maybe make it a little darker. And maybe let's make it kind of browner a little bit. I can't do much with this particular texture because it was already a pretty bright green. Now that we have that in, let's take a look at the base color. And this one I think I'm just going to kind of darken it. Now that doesn't really work so well. Maybe change the color a little bit. There we go. Another thing that you can add to this is also the option to like multiply using a number. So there's quite a few other additions that you can do to this material setup. But this is the basics that I wanted to show you, the ability to add these together and have a detail as well as a cover map, and kind of be able to use some different textures that Megascan provides and not just be a little locked into what the base scans come with. And as you can see, once you get up close to it, there's quite a lot of detail, or like quite more sharper detail from this texture. Okay. Well, one thing to note is depending on the way the mesh is scanned, you can see like there's some issues that this is where one of the seams is at, and that these might not match so well. But you can fix some of that by just going into your let's see, this is going to be for the cover, so you can just go into the cover, because I believe what we did is we changed this to be a 0.5. So you can just go into the cover and, for example, change it to a different value, and some of that issues might not be so obvious, but that is one of the kind of a little bit of a downfall to using it this way. Okay, well, so that's going to be it for this video. You guys let me know if you have any other suggestions for videos, and I'll try and do that in some of my free spare time. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully this was helpful for some of you guys. All right, take care, everybody.